Hi, I'm Rick Reef, and welcome to Inside OC. Democrat Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez has made her heated re-election bid a little hotter with provocative comments on Spanish-language TV. She called her challenger, Assemblyman Van Tran, anti-immigrant and anti-Latino. Will the comment hurt her or rally her Hispanic base? We'll discuss Sanchez versus Tran on Consider This. But first, Islamophobia in America. Is it real or exaggerated? Plans for an Islamic cultural center a couple of blocks from Ground Zero have fueled a fiercely emotional debate in this country about terrorism, patriotism, and the role of Islam in America and the world. Is America's war on terrorism turning into a holy war, or are some Muslim activists being tone deaf to legitimate concerns and sensitivities of their fellow citizens? Here to discuss, Hussam Ayloush, California Executive Director of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and Rabbi Dov Fischer of Irvine-based Young Israel of Orange County. Welcome back, gentlemen.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
So I ask you, Hussam, is America Islamophobic?
Well, no, of course not. America is not. I think.
Of course not.
Of course not. No, no. America has always been open to pluralism, to diversity. What we're going through is a phase, unfortunately, that I think the American public are being duped, are being exploited by a small minority of Islamophobes or anti-Muslim bigots who are exploiting Americans' lack of understanding and knowledge of Islam, and of course some legitimate fears that we have of terrorism. Otherwise, I think most Americans are open, and then we've seen it again. But nevertheless, the numbers are scary, worrisome. The recent poll from ABC shows about 49% of Americans carrying or holding unfavorable views about Islam. So this is a problem.
Doesn't that start to approach Islamophobia?
It's a combination. You know, fear of Islam, unjustified. It's fueled by hate mongers, by fear mongers who are trying to maybe build their own careers, political careers, or serve their own hateful agendas. We see that by exploiting certain incidents, certain events, such as the building of the mosque in Lower Manhattan, near Ground Zero. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but obviously it's being seen.
Dov, I'd like to get your opinion. First of all, do you think there is a growing Islamophobia, and is the protest over the Ground Zero mosque an example of that?
I don't believe there's Islamophobia in the country. You know, in the United States, we've always been a nation that was concerned when a new religious kind of organization or belief came forward that we didn't fully understand. At one time, Mormons were killed and murdered in the United States. Today, a Mormon runs for president of the United States. When John Kennedy sought the presidency, we'd never before had a Catholic president. Now we have a Catholic vice president, and people don't think about it. We'd never had a Jewish candidate until Joe Lieberman. But you know, Rick, when my grandfather heard that John Kennedy had been assassinated, his first reaction, I was a little guy at the time, his first reaction was, I hope it wasn't a Jew. That was how Jews always reacted in America. When anything bad happened, I hope it wasn't a Jew. And everybody would wring their hands, and all the Jewish organizations would be ready to come out the next day and condemn and throw whoever it would be out of the community if it would be a Jew. And I think that's where some Americans have a problem, that 9/11 happened, 19 people flew those aircraft into different terrorist targets. 19 people. They all were Muslim Islamists. 15 of them were Saudi Arabians. And I think that was a golden opportunity for American Muslims, like my good friend Hussam, to go forward and to really get into the papers and say, this is not Islam, this is not the Quran, and we condemn it. And I think that's where Americans want to hear more.
I thought that Hussam did, but did you condemn 9/11?
Right. Yeah, I forgot about Hussam. I mean, of course I did. It's a myth. It's one of the biggest myths actually fueling Islamophobia. And I'm of course not saying the rabbi is you know, he's a victim of that myth itself.
Yeah, in other words, the myth that there were 19 Islamists and 15 from Saudi Arabia?
The myth that Muslims did not, the myth that Muslims did not condemn in the strongest forms and language those terrorists and their actions. Every Muslim organization in America, without exception, every Muslim leader in America, every Muslim country and every Muslim leader throughout the world had unequivocally condemned these people. What they did is un-Islamic, is immoral, is criminal, and they should be punished, or those who are behind them should be punished to the fullest extent. I mean, speaking of newspapers, we took full-page ads in the LA Times, the New York Times, We've been on TV. I don't think there was a shortage of expressions of condemnation from the Muslim community. What happens is there were people who were feeding the information that Muslims are not condemning it, Muslims are condoning it, Muslims are enjoying it and celebrating it. And obviously when people don't know, most people in America have not had the chance to deal with Muslims or interact with Muslims. And it's easier to believe these urban legends, especially with the help of the internet and the lack of knowledge of Islam. And we saw that in the Ground Zero Park 51 mosque, which was called Ground Zero, whereas it was never meant to be built on Ground Zero itself.
Well, you know, it's kind of like right this moment, you have a wonderful opportunity, Hussam, to educate me. Would you condemn Hamas?
Absolutely. Here's the problem.
Say the sentence.
No.
I condemn Hamas.
Let me clarify.
I condemn Hamas.
Let me ask you, since you bring it in the Middle East.
Please.
Do you condemn those Israeli settlers who are sitting on that land and now?
No, because that's peaceful. I believe Jews have a right to live in Judea Samaria. But you show me.
But the United States is
show
saying
me a
that that was
Jewish
an
person.
impediment to the peace process.
Yes, but you see the difference. Show me a person who commits terrorism like Baruch Goldstein, a Jewish terrorist. I condemn it. No question. I still haven't heard that Hussam condemns Hamas.
And this is exactly.
I still have not.
No, can I speak?
I was just answering a question. I'd love to hear you speak. I'd love to hear you speak.
Here's
However,
the problem we have.
You condemned Hamas?
Can I say a word?
Condemn Hamas.
Can I say anything? Is it your show? Can I leave and you speak for me?
No, let Dov finish and then we'll
The problem is the Muslims' strong opposition and criticism of Israel's war crimes and occupation and illegal building of apartheid wall should never be understood as condoning any killing of innocent people by Hamas, by Fatah, by PLO. We condemn it in the same equivalence. Any targeting, when Hamas engages in killing innocent people, and engages in terrorism, we condemn it without any hesitation.
What I hear you saying is you're condemning some of the actions of Hamas. You're not condemning Hamas itself.
When Hamas engages in peace, we will not condemn that. When Hamas engages in running for government and representing the interests of the Palestinian people, that's the right. See, what we don't compare, what we don't make equal, is there's no more equivalency between the occupier, and that is Israel, and the occupied, and that is the Palestinians. What we need to do is make sure that neither side engages in killing innocent people, whether it's the Palestinians or the Israelis. But more importantly is resolve the root cause of the problem, and that is Israel's racism and violence and occupation.
The United States deems Israel to be a democratic ally, her closest ally, a peace-loving nation. I think this,
South Africa.
We agree this is Rick Reeves' show. And therefore, so
not
Israel.
Right now.
you invited us.
You're still in short.
I did.
Israel. So the United States sees Israel as a friend and an ally, and sees Hamas as a terrorist organization. I still haven't heard Hussam speak on behalf of CAIR and say CAIR condemns Hamas. And until we hear those kinds of things, Americans wonder, why is it that spokespeople for the Islamic community, while saying that they're against individual acts, why is it we can't hear from the Islamic community, its leaders, I condemn the organization America's government deems terrorist, namely Hamas?
I made it very clear. Let me repeat, Rabbi.
Ground Zero.
There's a missing point.
Can an American citizen take a position different than the government? In other words, the government has condemned Hamas, or it's a terrorist organization. Are you being un-American if you take the view of an American Muslim such as Hussam, who says, well, I'm not going to go that far. I'll condemn their bad stuff, but I won't outright go where most Americans probably would go in condemning. Does that make you un-American?
You know, it's sort of like Don Corleone. So it's, well, I condemn Don Corleone and Michael Corleone when they murder police officers at the restaurant, but I love the fact that they also help perpetuate some justice in the community. Either we condemn certain kinds of behavior and those who perpetuate it. It's a free speech environment, so any American can say, as far as I'm concerned, I like Hamas. However, if you want to change the environment in America, if you want, as your question that is this segment's central piece, what does it take for Americans to feel that Muslims share the American perceptions of fair play, justice, peace, anti-terrorism? We would benefit by hearing forthrightly, I condemn Hamas, and in the same way, if there's a Muslim terrorist who goes with the underwear bomber, or the Muslim terrorist who shot Americans at the Army base at Fort Hood, it's not enough simply to put out a press release.
We
have to do what Jews did. We have to do what Jews did.
What our government has done. Our government has supported. We have a history of supporting dictators. We've supported South Africa. We've called Nelson Mandela a terrorist. The ANC. So it's not where we judge things. What is more important is the principles. The principles are any targeting of any civilians, of innocent people, whether it's by Palestinians or by Israelis, is condemned unequivocally.
Well, speaking of the message that you're trying to make, CAIR has put out some public service announcements to counter anti-Muslim perceptions. Let's take a look at a couple of them.
When my friend came up to me and told me that Sean Powell was on the list, I took out my phone and I called him. That's really when it hit me, and I was like, okay, this is real. I'm a New York City firefighter, and I responded to 9/11, and I am a Muslim.
As yourself.
That one's faith is not complete
until he wishes for his brother what he wishes for
oneself.
The ability to practice our religion.
If we don't have our rights,
is at the heart of American freedom.
You don't have your rights.
Salam.
Peace.
Duty to developing a makeshift eye wash station, to creating, I wanted to help my fellow Americans and my fellow New Yorkers. That's why I did it. My name is Rudy. I'm a clinical pharmacist, a first responder in 9/11, and a Muslim.
So, Dov, that was a compilation of a few ads. As you watched that, how did you feel as you were watching?
I think for myself and all Americans, we believe that Islam, a religion, is one of the world's great religions. It must be honored as a great religion. Orthodox Judaism, like Islam, we pray several times daily. Muslims pray 5 times. They face Mecca daily. We respect that, and those aspects of the advertisement are beautiful, and we all should agree. And by the way, I also condemn forthrightly that nut in Florida who was talking about burning Korans. At the same time, I did not hear a single word that really condemns those in the Muslim world who use the Quran and Islam to perpetuate and defend terrorism.
How do you feel, Dov, about the mosque at near Ground Zero, or the Islamic, one side says it's Islamic Cultural Center, a couple of blocks, others say it's the mosque at Ground Zero, but in any case, should that project go forward?
Mosques to be built in the United States, absolutely. However, there should be no mosque at Ground Zero, because 19 Islamists took down that building. If the Islamic world and Saudi Arabia would really like to do something to foster brotherhood, let them invest money and rebuild the World Trade Center at Ground Zero.
What about that, Hassan?
Any Americans have the right, should have the right to build anywhere. And for anyone who says Muslims should not be building near Ground Zero, it's almost like blaming Islam. Islam has nothing to do and had nothing to do with these terrorists. Muslims should not be subjected to collective punishment. Muslims can, like all Christians and Jews, it's almost like saying Catholics should not be building churches because some priests engage in child molestation, or Jews should not be building synagogues because Israel is engaging in this act or that act.
Actually,
any
the Pope
American
agreed.
should
the Pope
be building.
of the Catholic Church agreed
We're
there
in
should
America.
not be a convent.
We are
at
in America.
Auschwitz.
America respects
that
freedom of
Auschwitz
religion.
was not the place for a convent. The Pope agreed. So you brought up Catholics and whether they should.
You know what? We are America, and that's what makes us different. We in America do not discriminate against any religious population.
Build mosques everywhere
in the
country,
40s,
but
in
not where you have
1947,
taken down a building.
in the 40s,
Well,
there was opposition to Jews joining the
army. When you say
army.
you have taken down a building, you saying that Islam...
Islamists took down a building, took down 2 buildings.
They're terrorists.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't.
Yes.
Do they represent Islam? Do you think they represent Islam?
All you have to do,
every
if you condemn Hamas, you'll convince
every
me.
Muslim has condemned Al-Qaeda and has condemned the acts of these. Are you saying?
What about Hamas?
Are you saying the 19 hijackers who attacked us are equivalent to Palestinians resisting against Israel's occupation? Are you equating our wars with Israel's problems? Israel is an occupying force. Israel is occupying somebody else's land. Israel has its own problems. Today, in the UN, today was condemned. Today, Israel was condemned by the UN for its war crimes.
I think the only occupation we have time for now is what Rick does for an occupation, what I do for an occupation, and what you do for an occupation.
We should not blame Muslims.
We can talk about the
American
Jewish
Muslims
right.
are
We
equal
can talk
citizens,
about the Jewish
and anyone
right to
who
live.
tries to deny Muslims their right in this country is fueling bigotry, because this is not about the Ground Zero mosque, quote unquote. The mosque in Temecula, Tea Party activists brought dogs to intimidate Muslims. Muslim mosques are being vandalized in Florida, in Northern America.
That. Well, I condemn that.
Absolutely, I know that, but we
And
have to be
Jews have a
careful.
right to live in
That's
Judea,
what it
Samaria,
begins.
the land of the
Dov,
Bible.
you get the last word.
On the subject of occupation, which is for another day, Jews have the right to live anywhere in the United States. Nowhere should be Judenrein barred from Jews, and Jews should be allowed to live anywhere in Judea, Samaria, in the lands of the Bible. I'm always glad to be with Hussam because we can have this kind of civil dialogue.
As a matter of fact, we don't have time because we've gone on too long, but you did have a beautiful exchange of wishes in the season, Hussam, in our emails leading up to this show, and you wished the rabbi a belated Shana Tova. The rabbi responded, hoping that you and your family enjoyed a meaningful and celebratory Eid Fitr.
Absolutely. It's not a religious conflict, it's a political difference.
And so even though you guys really go at it, you're great friends. Thanks again. We'll have you back on.
Thank you very much.
So what do folks in Orange County think about Islamophobia? Here's David Nazar.
Anti-Muslim sentiment in this country, do you sense it, feel it?
I don't feel it, I don't sense it. I hear about it all the time.
Is there anything about the Islamic faith that troubles you or bothers you just by the way the media has been portraying it lately?
Well, I think the media has the ability to exaggerate everything. I do believe that Islam, if from the people I hear who are Islamic, that it is a religion of peace. And I'd like to believe that, you know, that the majority of people, whether they're Islamic or Catholic or Christian or Jewish, we're all people of peace.
Do you sense that there's anti-Muslim sentiment going on right now in this country, Islamophobia, as it were?
To some extent, I'm sure that there is, especially with what you see in the news. But on the other hand, I think it could go both ways. I think that, you know, you've got a right and a left media that tend to always overstate what's going on out there.
What you seem to be saying is that this issue is less about religion and it's more somewhat being politicized.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, either side, the left or the right, would use, you know, the supposed Islamophobia or lack thereof to, you know, to further themselves.
You mentioned this mosque or cultural center at Ground Zero. What is your personal take on this issue?
You know, if people are going to build mosques in the country, I don't have a problem with that. But at the same time, me personally, I think that it just seems like poor taste to build it in a place where the attack happened.
To me, it's no problem with the Ground Zero, no problem there, unless anti-Muslim. And I think that goes against what we stand for in the United States.
Speaking of anti-Muslim, do you feel there is an anti-Muslim sentiment in this country right now, sir?
I would say probably with a minority, with a small minority of people who are not well aware of everything that's going on. Just pick a side and that's it.
Do you feel that Muslims are being discriminated against?
Yes, I do.
Why is that?
In many ways. The way they dress, people look at them and feel they're different simply because they're dressed differently. They kneel down and they pray 5 times a day, and to people that is different, and they don't feel like they belong here. And I feel that is a form of discrimination.
And now for 2 more views on the Islamophobia debate. Joining me for this edition of Consider This, constitutional lawyer and Republican Karen Lugo, and lawyer and former Democratic congressional candidate Steve Young. Welcome. Karen, I think that sampling, was rather pro-Muslim, and I think maybe if we had taken it at Ground Zero, would have gotten a little different sampling. But what's your feeling?
At this point in America, with the emphasis that the Ground Zero Mosque has brought to this discussion, there is definitely a heightened sense of, if Islamophobia means fear of Islam, there is a fear, and I think should be a fear, of Sharia Islam. America should be a place where we are declaring that it's a safe place for moderate or modernized Muslims, but when it comes to the idea of Sharia Islam, which does not separate a civic life and a religious life, everything is dictated according to a legalistic sense of Islam. And in America, that runs head on. There's a collision with our sense of individual liberties that in America just will not be tolerated.
Does that affect whether that mosque should be built near Ground Zero?
Absolutely, at the point that that money is coming predominantly from Arab states. We have legitimate questions to ask about the money, as well as his Sharia Compliance Index project.
What about that, Steve? This is more than just religious freedom. It's about terrorism, ties to Sharia and law and all that sort of thing.
Well, I have a couple of comments on what I just heard. Number one is, I don't know how in America we can control religious practice, no matter what it is. But the real issue that I see here, and the complaints about the cultural center near Ground Zero, that also includes a mosque, I don't understand why people aren't stepping up and saying, let's build a mosque there. Right next to it, let's build a synagogue. Let's bring in a Mormon temple. Let's build a Catholic church. Let's put an atheist cultural center and a humanist center. I think we should make Ground Zero a peace center for the world, where people come together for the purpose of recognizing what happened there, explore the causes and how to prevent anything like that from happening again, and make it a cooperative effort. I don't think you do that by demonizing a group of people who are expressing values that I just heard the doctor say. I guess I call you that as a law professor. With regard to, we've got all these good Muslims. Well, why don't we explore the best of them and the best of everybody else and solve the issue, as opposed to making it a divisive issue that's dividing everybody?
The difficulty is when there was a Falls Church, Virginia mosque that assured us of those very things. It would be a cultural center, an Islamic center, it would be outreach to the community, and then we have Al-Awari, who's now being targeted by predator drones because he radicalized 3 different terrorists, including the Fort Hood shooter. So at that point, at what point do you stop believing and really start testing and watching where the money comes from?
Is that individual action or religious action? I think you got to separate individuals from a group of people. I had a very interesting thing I used to do when I was running for office and had the time liberty to do it when I wasn't working. I would go to a mosque Friday afternoon, and I would go to a Jewish synagogue the same evening, and I would participate in both services. They taught the same thing. We are all together as men and women with a common belief and desire, and this thing that divides people. I mean, all these people I hear complaining about Muslims and this isn't appropriate and it's an affront. Have you read the Quran? Have you understood what they stand? That's the real issue that I ask.
I would love to invite you to come to the Barbès district of Paris, where the streets are barricaded. I'll buy you dinner. I'll buy you dinner. The streets are barricaded for Friday prayers, and residents cannot come and go to their homes. There are now 750 culturally sensitive zones in France, where Sarkozy says we're not comfortable sending law enforcement people, and those are Sharia districts. The French never thought it would happen there. Neither did the British, neither did the Germans.
They might have thought about that before they invaded Morocco and Algeria. I'm just saying that what we're really looking at here is an issue of how do we approach what is becoming a cultural issue in America, and that is, how do we profess freedom of religion, and that we're one country under God or one country without God, however you want to characterize it for your particular position, and still say we're not going to allow these people freedom to build religious centers where they desire.
We have to go. I'm sorry. It was, and Loretta and Van Tran will have to wait till the next show. You can watch this show and past shows by going to koce.org and clicking on Inside OC. My guests have been Hussam Aylouch, Dov Fischer, Karen Lugo, and Steve Young. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again Inside OC.
Inside OC is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of KOCE. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com.